right, so welcome to the last of our COVID digital history classrooms. We're going to end today. This is the last lesson. It's the one my class has been looking for, Mr. Cox. This is Heritage High School, Heritage Homeschool High School. Last history class here for World History 2020. All right, so this will be your last homework assignment you're going to get for the year, by the way. You do not need to finish the book. We have done 30 chapters. That's plenty. If you want to read the rest just because you're so smart, well, I wouldn't be surprised. All right, so get me that homework in the next week or two, and I'll get your grades out for your parents, okay? All right, so I always teach the last lesson here on a short year like this on the Cold War. The Cold War was, it's always taught in U.S. history class, and I do that too because, you know, it's the U.S. involvement in it. But for the Cold War to be taught as a U.S. history class is a mistake. And it's a mistake that the whole rest of the world picks up on. I'm not sure we always do. But the Cold War was not the United States versus the former Soviet Union, the United States versus Russia. That's not what it was. That's what a lot of people think it was. What it was actually two conglomerations of countries on either sides of an opposing view. NATO on this side, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and on the other side, the Warsaw Pact. Of course, we're part of NATO. You guys would know that, but the Warsaw Pact was basically headed up by the former Soviet Union. And so when you look at the world like this, it wasn't this. It wasn't this, the United States versus Russia. It was not that. It was this. It was this. It was the Warsaw Pact versus the NATO organization. And that was more like what it really was. Now, NATO, I got to look this up because I can never remember them all. Belgium, Britain, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg. Thank goodness they were on our side. All right, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, and the United States. Okay, the Warsaw Pact, the opposing, the guys in red. All right, those guys. Albania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, Poland, Romania, and let's not forget the Soviet Union. All right, so plus there were a couple little proxy war countries in there: Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, kind of Vietnam. For us, Afghanistan for Russia, and then you sort of just threw Korea in there, and by Korea, they mean North Korea. So what you really have is not two countries going at it, or two countries sitting there with cocked guns just looking at each other. What you really had were about 25 countries. Everybody standing around just waiting for the other person to drop the hat so we could start World War III, all right? And to those other countries, they felt that they were important in this fight too. And believe me, if war would have ever broken out, just like in World War I and World War II, it would have been a war of alliances. It would have been a war where, hey, you hit him, you fight me. You touch them, you deal with us. And just like World War I and World War II were. And we'd have all fell in line again, except this time in a little more severe, severe theater. It was a war of two distinctly differing ideals, basically capitalism on the NATO side, communism, which was the rising force in the world at that time, on of course the Warsaw Pact side. And in fact, the third world, when people say, oh, it's a third world country, that didn't used to mean poor. When that coin was termed, it meant, anybody? Anyone? It meant any country that wasn't in the NATO alliance or the Warsaw Pact. That's really what that meant. And then later on, because those countries are often kind of small and poor and non-aligned, that's where third world nation, that's where that came from. It came to mean poor. It didn't start that way. How the Cold War actually got started is kind of a little source of debate. People write papers on that. People have very strong and differing opinions on that. was Russia just not given enough credit for their part of the victory over Germany in World War II? Well, that's quite possible. They liberated more camps than we did. They lost a lot more people than we did. They got into the war a whole lot earlier than we did. Do they have an argument for that? Absolutely, yes they do. But is that really why it started? I don't know. Could have been part of it though. Most things are not, they don't come down for one reason. It's usually several reasons lumped in to kind of, you know, just knock over the apple cart. So, differing ideologies? Yeah, definitely. Definitely that. Two ways of looking at the world. But greed. When in doubt, trying to figure out what happened wrong, always go with the money. Okay, go with the money. Greed. Greed after the war victories, when it came to carving up the spoils. There's your culprit. Right there. That's far, far, far more likely as, hey, I won, what do I get? And that's probably actually more concise reason that it actually got started. The Soviets were very concerned about Germany. Germany had started, well, not started, but basically been a catalyst in the First World War and started the second one. And they didn't want to deal with Germany again. Basically, Russia was losing, at one point in Stalingrad, 19,000 soldiers, and combatants a day. They did not want to fool with Germany after the war, so they wanted to make sure they got to take care of Germany after the war, and they figured they get to do that because we still had to do what after VE Day? We still had to do what? Who'd we still have to fight? Oh, yeah.
Japan.
Yeah, we still had to fight Japan. We had to fight Japan, so they're like, dude, they're going to be busy for like years. Island hopping their way to Japan to get to the Empire of Japan and take the mainland and invade, because Hirohito said he was going to fight till the last man. So he vowed to do that. So they figured they're not going to be worried about, they're not going to be sitting at the table when we're carving up the spoils. It's no big deal. They're going to be busy. Okay? But then a certain little thing happened. A certain little incident that happened that suddenly ended World War II much, much quicker. What was that? Yep.
The atomic bomb.
The atomic bomb. Atomic bomb was dropped on which two cities?
Yeah. Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's right. And suddenly, the war, which was going to take like years, cost maybe 1 million. American soldiers' involvement, and we'd had 50,000 Purple Hearts made up for for the invasion. Excuse me, just for the invasion itself. All right, all of a sudden Russia's like, oh wait, it's done. They dropped 2 bombs and it's over with? What kind of bombs are these? Well, they found out. All right, because after a while they got some too. So all of a sudden, we're right back at the table going with, sitting there with Russia like, no, okay, what were you going to do? So literally, we kind of divide Germany. We divide Germany into what and what?
Like East and West. East
and West Germany, right? They get East, we get West. We took the one with the nicer neighborhoods, better shopping. All right, so, but they built the what? The what? And then when they say divided it, they didn't mean like some, this is my side, that's your side kind of thing. They built the what? Yeah.
Berlin Wall.
The Berlin Wall. And, excuse me, they built the Berlin Wall because they wanted a physical divide, not a representative or symbolic one. So they put the Berlin Wall up in like a little bit of no time, like literally they put it up basically overnight. And you were on this side, you were on this side, and if you were on that side, you were on that side, and if you tried to get from this side to that side, they shot you. All right, it was pretty simple. All right, so then that wall went up, and the Iron Curtain fell, as they like to say, because suddenly we were back at the table, and they had to share Germany with us, which they didn't think they were going to have to do. So, The Cold War, the wall is symbolic because it divided Germany, but it also divided like two different ideologies, two different realities. Like if you lived on this side, life was very different if you lived on that side. Let me show you. All right, so here, please do it. Okay, so right here, so kind of like NATO versus Warsaw Pact. This is kind of like what it is now. You know, it's kind of expanded. There's still, you know, sort of. But it'd be like more like if you were looking at it worldwide. Here it is, good view from the top, easy to see it. And then all of a sudden, overnight, Germany gets divided. They're dividing up Berlin. All right, capital. All right, and they put up this wall. And they do it real fast. You can kind of see that it's like basically being made by the soldiers who are also guarding it. They're not fooling around. They're not fooling around when they put the Berlin Wall up. They would shoot you for trying to get across. And then all of a sudden this happens and this happens. We drop these two just incredible atomic devices. Just very, very frightening things. And one of which made right over here in the little province of Oak Ridge, right above Knoxville there, kind of a little bit. And I've been over there and toured it. If you haven't gotten the chance, and you get a chance, you should. History was made right here. It was one of the biggest secrets in the country. At that time, it was one of the biggest secrets in the world. Nobody knew what they were doing, a handful of people. And they had no idea why they were working. And if you talked about your job, basically they took you away. And sure enough, they were making a little ball of plutonium that would be the heart of one of these atomic bombs. Okay, which one? It doesn't matter. I don't need you to know that for the test. What do we care, right? It was one of them, and they were both pretty terrible. All right, so who wins the Cold War? Well, most people would say we did. Most people would say we did. Here's the Enola Gay. By the way, this is his name for his mom. Okay, all right, and so that was the pilot's mom's name. And anyway, so he named that. And by the way, I've seen that plane. It sits in the Air and Space Museum at the Udvar Hazy Museum in Virginia, Northern Virginia. If you get a chance, it's pretty neat. They got an SR-71 in there. It's kind of a cool field trip for you, anyway, if you like airplanes. So. It came down Christmas of 1991. So that marks the end of the Cold War. Most people would say, well, when did it start? I would say just basically as soon as we bombed Japan all the way, and all the way through to 1991. The Cold War was a long thing. It was my old childhood growing up. Basically, it had already started when I got here in 1969. Like I say, 1991, I was out of high school, and it was still going on before the wall came down. But the Berlin Wall finally came down, and most people would say that's when the U.S. won. That's when capitalism won. That's when NATO won. By the way, that wall stood up for 10,316 days. How long is that? In other words, it had been gone 10,316 days only in February of 2019. So it hasn't. It stood almost as long as it's been gone. It was up a good long time. So we dropped the bomb on Japan. Japan surrenders within 2 weeks. The bomb puts the Soviets in a race to catch up. 4 years later, they would test their own atomic bomb. Just 4 years. That's pretty great, starting from zero. And the U.S. would field test a thermonuclear weapon. That would not be an atomic bomb, a nuclear bomb in 1952. Less than 1 year later, the Soviets would do the same. And that is what started a little something called the arms race. All right, the arms race. All right, so a couple of atomic bomb facts. President Truman had the bomb. It had only been tested a couple of days before we tried it out on Japan. Just a couple of days. It's not like we hung on to it for a long time before we dropped it. Because Russia was, and here's the thing that you never get taught. You never get taught this in public school. It's because Russia was about to launch an attack on Japan from their side of things, to also get to divide up Japan when the war was over, like they were going to divide up Germany. They figured, we'll divide up Germany now, but we'll also start attacking Japan, and that way they have to share Japan with us too, because they figured, I guess, we were going to divide Japan in half at Tokyo. I don't know what their thought was. We didn't do that. Japan was going to be set on by two armies at once and would have to surrender, and then that means Russia would get to share in the spoils. So We dropped the bomb, some people say, for this: to ensure an unconditional surrender, which it definitely did. Bring a quick end to the war, which it definitely did. Avoid a U.S. invasion and the subsequent high casualties, which it did. Leave Russia completely out of it, which it did. And leave a clear military warning to Russia, which it also did. How do you know? Because they built the bomb just as fast as they could. So yeah, definitely. The Enola Gay was named after the pilot's mom. It burned, the atomic bomb burned at 60 million degrees Fahrenheit. 166,000 deaths at Hiroshima, 80,000 in Nagasaki. That's 246,000 dead people, Japanese, if you're keeping score at home. The air crew carried cyanide tablets in case the mission was a failure. Truman was prepared to drop even more bombs than those two. The Japanese were expected to fight till the last man, but Hirohito surrendered unconditionally right after the second bomb. A bonsai tree planted in 1626 was less than 2 miles from the blast, and it now resides in Washington, D.C. at the National Arboretum if you get over that way. All right. Kyoto was the actual target, not Nagasaki. It was a much, much larger city. A lot more people would have died. But the Secretary of War took his honeymoon there, and he didn't want to see it blown up. So the folks of Kyoto are so happy about that. All right, so you ended up with, the upshot of this was you ended up the Cold War. You ended up with, us sticking our tongue out at Russia, them, sticking theirs out right back for a long, long time. And you ended up with this, what we call nuclear stockpiling, like where we don't have 1 bomb, 2 bomb, 3 bombs, 100 bombs, 1,000 bombs. We have many, many thousands of bombs, lots and bunches, 1,700 at the ready at any moment, 4,000 roughly ready to go, probably the next day or whenever, and probably about 6,000 some odd held in total. Russia has more nuclear missiles, and we have apparently better ones. So they say it's about even. There's really nobody's really better. They got more. Ours are more effective. I really don't see how it matters when, and one of these things makes a city glow for 100 years. What difference does it make, And so you ended up with this crazy stockpiling of weapons. Those were reduced to some extent in the 1970s, all right? And you get an idea of the total weapons stockpile. Now, this is fun. Here's, let's see, here's Russia up here. Got a few more than us. Here's the USA right here. Here's the whole rest of the world right here. I think we're ready, okay? I think we probably got enough now. Probably got enough, all right? But us, them, us, and everybody else, okay? So yeah, so we're pretty ready on the nuclear stockpile thing. All right, so I want you to write a paper for me about how scared are you when you talk about when you think the world's going to end. Like, how many of you think it will end? I want you to tell me, first of all, how you think the world will end. Let's just do it like that. I want you to give me the first paragraph, 2 paragraphs, half a paper. First paragraph, I want you to tell me how you think the world will end. The Terminator's going to get us. Is COVID going to morph again and start killing like that book, The Stand? Don't read that, by the way. Or is... or the nuke's gonna get us, you know what I mean? And but I want you to write how you think the world's gonna end. I love these papers, they're always fun. No stupid stuff, please. Please, not with the aliens and the, just, if you really believe it and you got some good supporting arguments, okay, come at me. But, you're looking for a good C on that paper, okay? I want real stuff, okay? The purple, one-eyed monsters, just give me the good stuff, okay? The second paragraph, second part of the second paragraph, I want you to tell me how afraid are you of nuclear weapons? Like, I grew up, that was all anybody talked about. That was all that was ever on the news. Nikita Khrushchev and this one, and now, oh man, those guys were always on there like beating a podium with a shoe and screaming and whatever else, and whatever. And then Vladimir Putin, he's kind of scary, isn't he? Oh man, I don't know, right? Anyway, so I want you guys to write that. Like, how much do you think about nuclear attack, not a nuclear holocaust? Does it ever bother you? Do you lose sleep over that? Okay, I want you to tell me that. 2 paragraphs, half a sheet of paper. You're done for the year. I missed you guys. I'm sorry I ended up having to teach like this, but hopefully we made the best of it. And there's no final, by the way. There's no final. How can I give you a final? You just look at the answers. I would, definitely would cheat my way to a better grade. All right, so I suspect you might do the same. So let's just not do a final. We'll just take your homework grades and your participation and spruce them up a little bit and try to get you guys a good ending to the year. All right, honestly, signing off. I miss you guys.